In this video, we're taking Nikon's brand new flagship DX camera out to shoot some birds, to shoot some sport, and then to shoot some model photography with Jade. Hey folks, before we jump into the D500 video, jump on over to mattgranger.com/sales. There I regularly update some different package deals. At the moment that I'm recording this in June 2016, I currently have end of financial year sales up with big savings, so check it all out. Hey folks, I'm happy to finally be bringing you my thoughts on the Nikon D500. Honestly, I think this is the most hotly anticipated camera of the year, and that's with a lot of stuff having been announced. The Nikon D300, D300S are really long in the tooth and hadn't been updated in ages. There was a lot of APS-C crop frame camera shooters out there dying for a sports update. Finally got one in from MPS Australia. Let's check it out. Now, the D500 is so hotly anticipated and has been reviewed by everyone already. I'm pretty sure you know all the specs already if you're watching this video. If not, I'll pop a link in the caption below where you can read out the specs for yourself. But for this one, there's a couple of specific things that I want to test today. The first one is speed. So this is doing 10 frames a second, fantastic for this kind of a point in the market, and it has the XQD card, just like the D5. Now, my D5 has two XQDs. This has an XQD and an SD. No option on that. You have to take one of either. But given that this is the same resolution, slower speed at 10 frames a second than the D5, and it has the same card technology, let's see if the pipeways in this mean that the buffer will never fill, because I can't really fill the D5 and it's doing more frames a second. So this one should theoretically just never fill up, except it has a 200 cap in RAW. The other speed issue is focus capabilities. Without sounding like a fanboy, the D5 has the best focus I've ever used. This has the same system, and I have to say, I can suddenly see what all the hype was about. The points go right to the edge. So if you're tracking things, no longer you're constrained to the center part of the overall shot. This goes right to the edge. Can't wait to see how that actually works out. So a lot of people actually want a crop camera when they're doing things like shooting wildlife, especially birding. That turns your 200mm lens effectively into a 300 in terms of its reach anyway. So for some people, that's a big issue. This combo will get that much closer to the bird than the D5 will with this lens, and you're getting all your pixels onto the bird rather than having the extra around it that you then crop in later. That's a big thing. So in this, we're going to be going out and testing it, shooting some birds. We're also going to shoot some sports with it, see how it does with tracking that. At the end of the video, what I want to see is at 2,000 US dollars or 3,000 Australian dollars, it's a third of the price of the Nikon D5. So how much of the quality are you getting from the D5 and what are you sacrificing going for this guy? Let's check it out. Oh, there you go, buddy. Okay, folks, so I'm not much of a bird photographer, but I've come out to the wild bird wetland in Doonside out at Blacktown, finding a few birds. It's not just overrun with them, but it should be good enough. First impressions with the D500. I'm currently shooting with the 400mm f2.8 lens from Nikon. Amazing combo. So when you're going to compare the advantages of crop to full frame in this kind of situation, you really need to shoot them side by side. Otherwise, just what you're using is what you're using, right? But here with an effective focal length of 600mm, because of the crop, you do get that much closer. So I get all of the 20 megapixels of the camera right onto my subject. Of course, you know, the speed is going to be the big thing. Especially shooting long lens stuff, whether it's sports or birding, the ability to be able to pull it in is really important because things move quickly. And if I move from here, bird in frame, to here, bird is out of frame. So pulling back into shot and being able to re-pull it into focus quickly is a big thing. So I'm going to put this tracking through its paces. Let's take a walk around the park. Okay, so I've just spotted a little diver bird over there. Now this is where having points right to the side of the frame on the D500 is so great. With the D5, let me simulate it for you. The points only go to, I'll put him in the middle, grab continuous focus, Now, moving it over to one side, that's about as far to the side as I could put him. And on the other side, probably about there. Now with this one, because I can put it all the way to one side and have the focus stay on him, I can actually move him right to the edge of frame to get rid of the pylon, or bring him right over to this edge of frame, although I wouldn't really want to do that, but I do have the option for it. Here, let's check out a burst mode as this bird takes flight. You can see the 10 frames a second really lets you put down a lot of the action. All right, look, the D500 is lovely to shoot with. If you're going to be shooting this kind of bird stuff, you know, it's a no-brainer if you're shooting it all the time. For me, owning the D5 already, it's interesting to see the parallels. As I'm shooting it, it feels, I have to, you know, get this out first. It feels wonderfully responsive. It feels fast, it feels agile. It's probably the best crop camera I've ever used. Having said that, using it alongside the D5, it's not as responsive as the D5. It doesn't seem to pull focus as quickly. There's less buttons for less quick, easy access to things. I rotate it. Of course, you can just get yourself a grip for it. But I'm really interested to find out, how does it perform in terms of its burst mode, both in terms of just RAW and then RAW plus fine JPEG compared to the D5, because I've found I have clogged the buffer up a couple of times on this one today. Let's test it. Oh, better put it in continuous mode. Booyah, did you hear that? Blazing. All right. We'll count up the number of frames at the end and see how it did. So they both will conk out at 200 anyway. I'll give it like a 2-second delay before I start again. 1 and 1,000, 2 and 1,000. Okay, you're getting the point. Unstoppable speed on the D5. Now, the D500 is still really good. It's just, I don't think it's going to be able to keep up to this. Already I've run the buffer out, okay? Starting to stagger, and it stopped. So I think that may have been a second 200 with a little diddle-it at the end. Let's check the D500. Should mention both of these are using the same Lexar 2933 XQD cards, both writing to a single slot only. All of that's the same. Now let's see how this guy does. Got him on a tripod because his lens is so heavy. So that may sound slow by comparison. It's still 10 frames a second. It's really not too bad. So let's see how it goes. Obviously doing 10 frames a second is going to take longer to get to the 200, which if you're shooting something longer than the Olympics, that's a good thing. Okay, so there is 1 1,000, 2 1,000. I may have to eat my words because this looks like it's doing nearly as well. I have to say though, using the RAW plus fine JPEG really seemed to clog it up. I was already running it dead when I was shooting, but I have to say, even having shot with this during the day today, this is really impressing me that it's done that many. So we'll check it and put on screen how many they did against each other. In terms of the focus area coverage, love that this one has the wider points. Keep in mind though, it doesn't go to the top and bottom. So there were times where I'm framing up a shot, put my lens into portrait orientation, I want to get that frame. I still can't get the far left and far right then because the top and bottom of the focusing system don't have any. So in that case, it's not that far ahead of the D5, but having them edge to edge in landscape is a big thing. I have to say though, I would love to speak to someone at Nikon about specifically what it is that overall does the focusing speed, because it can't be just that. It must be that there's a different motor as well. Because I do still find that the D5 is faster to grab focus and slightly better at tracking than the D500. But that's like saying that the Porsche is slightly faster than the whatever. They're both performing outstandingly well. Two of the best cameras I've ever tested, but there is still an edge for the top of the line one D5, that, in my opinion. I do find that this D500 though underexposes a lot. Yeah, it's unusual. I've never found a camera that does that, but several times it could be just the glare throwing it off. But it seems about 2/3 of a stop under what I would expect from the file using the exposure compensation in one of the semi-automatic modes. So the focus speed, it's not blistering, but it would be useful in some applications. It's actually about the same time it takes to focus using the snap bridge, but then the transfer speed on snap bridge isn't brilliant. But we're gonna do a standalone video on that one where we'll walk you through all of that. But for now, this focusing system, in this situation, not really useful. I definitely think it would be useful in some shooting situations though. That's enough of those birds, huh? Let's go shoot something I'm a bit more familiar with. Nice, I like it. So we're just running through here to check the focus. This is not a difficult test for something like the D500. I'm using continuous 3D tracking right on her glasses and then having her walk towards me. Considering this will track wild animals and sports people, that's not a difficult test, but we are in low contrast lighting here and she's moving straight at the camera, which is still a reasonably difficult test. So if we're getting 10 out of 10, which it looks like we are, that's a pretty good result. So certainly the speed is overkill, but I really enjoyed shooting portraits with this camera. It's flexible, it's versatile, it's really responsive, and the image quality is fantastic. I'd have no problem taking this along to a portrait shoot. Okay folks, to test out the focus and everything on this D500, we've come out to the local soccer game and it's going to be quite challenging. I've never shot this kind of sport before, but let's see how it does and how it keeps up. And to test it out, at the same time I'm reviewing the 400mm 2.8, so we'll be mixing that lens in with different shots we get. Okay, so one thing, as I said, I'm not a sports shooter, but we already faced a common thing you'll find shooting in public of someone coming to challenge us about why we're shooting here and that there's a potential that there's 17-year-olds here. I'm sure that I was right legally we can shoot this, but you know, rather than getting into an argument, we asked them to go speak to the two team captains and check. Turns out everyone was over 18, so it saved us arguing or going somewhere else or being unwelcome. Keeping it friendly really helped. Now this combo, the D500 and the 400mm, it is really long because it gives us a field of view of 600, which unless they're on the far side, I really can't get a whole person and the ball. And as I said, this is not my specialty. So I think the quality of the images may reflect my inabilities rather than the equipment. It's doing really well. If I pop it on the ball, the focus point in continuous tracking, it's doing incredibly well of keeping up with everything. I'm really impressed. I think if you were going to be shooting sports with this camera and you have more experience at it than me, you're really not going to struggle at all. Okay, so whether we're shooting on monopod or tripod, you often find yourself changing, to portrait orientation. And in that situation, you do miss the button for the vertical grip. Of course, you can buy a grip for your D500. Between the two, I'd say they're really close. I do notice the extra 2 frames a second on this one though. When you're shooting a burst, it does give you that 20% more frames on the action. So you're more likely to get the peak moment exactly in your shot. I do also find that when I'm tracking someone, if someone runs in front of them, the D500 was a little bit more likely to lose focus of the person I was tracking than the D5, but they both did do it at times. I'll talk about this more in the conclusion. The D500 is really nicely built, but for those who think it's at that absolute top level, pro level, I don't think it's there. It's not like a D800, let alone a D5. But let's do some more testing. So I keep giving the disclaimer that I don't shoot sports right. I know it's a cop-out, but I have to say any decent shots I've gotten today, I didn't get any great ones. It is thanks to the equipment, I have to admit it. Whilst we shouldn't blame our equipment, at sometimes, and this is gonna fuel some purchases, I'm sure, having the right equipment makes all the difference. I can't keep up with the sport myself. I can't predict it, I don't know it well enough, I don't know what's about to happen. But to be able to be behind it, okay, there's where the ball's going, swing to it, and actually have the camera grab focus and track focus lets me get shots that otherwise with lower quality equipment and my low level of skill, I wouldn't be able to get. And the game has stopped. See, I don't know what's going on. Okay folks, so for the last several years, I have been an FX full frame shooter exclusively. I have to say though, the D500 is a hell of an impressive camera. I used to own the D300, loved it, thought it was a fantastic camera, long overdue upgrade to that one. Now, what I'm going to finish on here today is not meant as a diss, so let me get the good part out first. This is a phenomenal camera, full stop. If you're coming from any of the cameras beneath it or an older generation, you're going to be blown away by the quality. The build quality is very good. I still think it's a bit of a shame leaving the pop-up flash. They're doing it to make it more of a sealed unit like the top of the line units do. But even the D810 has a pop-up flash and it is better built than this one. So I'm not sure why they had to omit that on this guy. Overall, I would say it's probably the best crop DSLR that I've ever tested. It performs amazingly well, and yeah, you really, for what you're paying, I don't think you can complain too much. SnapBridge technology, I think, has potential. I don't know that it's quite there yet, unless there was some software incompatibility that we were handling, that we were dealing with. You can check out my upcoming user guide on this one, where I demonstrate how to use that and some of the issues that we found. Now, I want to mitigate that a little bit by saying, I've heard a lot of people saying, why on earth would you get a D5 when you can get the focusing system, same resolution, longer reach, for what, a third of the price, something like that, from the D500? And lamenting, why is this not listed in some countries, Australia for example, as one of the pro line bodies when you're going to apply for MPS membership? If you actually shoot these side by side, there is still a big difference. Apart from the fact that, you know, the battery and everything is a lot more beefy in this one. It's got the integrated grip, the obvious physical things. Overall, the handling of this and the build is another level up. I would even say in between this is clearly the D800 series is in between these two. No questions in my mind. This feels fantastic. It'll be fine for every purpose. I don't have any concerns about its build quality. It's just nowhere near this league. And the speed and everything was damn close, almost indistinguishable. I'd be absolutely happy with it. If you're used to having your wide angles to play with from FX though, this is where it's at. So it's a big premium to go for the D5. There are some definite advantages. If you say that this is like carved out of a piece of solid steel and feels like it could, you know, take being hit by a tank, well, this feels like it's been, you know, forged out of an amalgam of steel and metal, and that, you know, you could run into it with your VW Beetle. It's plenty tough, but it's just not the same kind of league. They would make a beautiful combination for the two, especially that they both take XQD cards. So if you're looking for high quality, high build quality, image quality, tracking ability, speed, buffer, all of those things, and you want a DX camera and you want full Nikon compatibility, the D500 without a question is an absolutely fantastic choice. That's pretty much it. I have to apologize that the test images here, the birds and the soccer, really not my forte, and the quality of the images does not reflect the camera. I have to wear that one, they're not my specialty. Hopefully the portrait shots of Jade were a little bit higher quality. Thank you to Nikon Professional Services for facilitating this loan. Their media team didn't have one available. I'm heading overseas very soon and they got one out to me, so I had it for just a week. I'm returning it tomorrow, so I really appreciate that. If I hadn't gotten it, then it would have been months before I had the opportunity to test it out. If you have any questions, let me know. If any of the things I've referred to will either be a card above or in a clickable link in the caption below. Jump over to the website, blah, 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 all the usual plug. See you later.